Ed O'Neill just broke decades of silence about Married with Children, and what he revealed will shock you. For 11 seasons, Al Bundy became one of the most iconic characters in television history. But what happened behind the scenes was darker than anyone imagined. Hidden feuds and brutal creative battles and secrets that the network desperately wanted to bury. Ed has finally opened up, and what he admitted changes everything. The real reason he almost walked away after season 3. The co-star he refused to work with for an entire year. The scene that was banned from ever airing again. And the one moment during filming that still gives him nightmares today. This is not some recycled interview filled with safe answers. These are confessions straight from Ed O'Neill himself, revealing mistakes and exposing ugly truths and explaining what it really cost him to play Al Bundy for over a decade. If you think you know everything about Married with Children, you are about to discover you were completely wrong. Let us dive into what Ed finally admitted after staying silent for so long. Before we dive into video, subscribe our channel. When Ed O'Neill auditioned for Married with Children in 1986, he was broke and desperate. He had been acting for years, but nothing stuck. Small roles in forgettable movies and a few television appearances that led nowhere. His agent called him about this new Fox sitcom and Ed almost did not go. He read the script and thought it was too crude and too risky and probably going to fail. But he needed the money, so he showed up. What happened in that audition room became television legend, but the real story is far different from what people think. Ed recently revealed that he bombed his first reading. He played Al Bundy too angry and too mean. The creators Michael Moy and Ron Levitt sat there in silence when he finished. Ed thought he had blown it completely. Then Ron asked him to try it again, but this time make Al pathetic instead of aggressive. Ed took a deep breath and let his shoulders slump. He delivered the same lines, but now Al sounded defeated and exhausted, like a man who had given up on everything except complaining. The room exploded with laughter. That shift from angry to pathetic was what made Al Bundy work, and Ed figured it out in about 30 seconds. But here is what Ed never told anyone until recently. He did not want the role even after he got it. Fox offered him the part, and Ed asked for time to think about it. His wife at the time told him he was crazy. They needed the money, and this was a real opportunity, but Ed was terrified of being stuck playing a loser for years. He had dreams of being a serious actor, doing dramas and important films. Playing a shoe salesman who hated his life felt like career suicide. Ed admitted he only said yes because his bank account was nearly empty and he had bills to pay. He signed the contract but spent the first season convinced the show would be cancelled and he would move on to something better. That something better never came. Married with Children became a hit, and Ed was trapped playing Al Bundy whether he liked it or not. What fans never figured out is that Ed resented the show for years. He showed up and did his job and collected his paycheck, but inside he was bitter. He watched other actors get movie roles and critical acclaim, while he was known as the guy who put his hand in his pants and insulted fat women. Ed said that bitterness poisoned his attitude on set and created problems with almost everyone around him. Most fans assume the Married with Children cast was one big, happy family, but that could not be further from the truth. Ed O'Neill recently admitted that his relationship with Katie Sagal was complicated and often tense. On screen, Peg and Al had incredible chemistry, but off-screen things were much different. Ed said Katie was talented and professional, but they had completely different approaches to acting. Katie liked to improvise and play around with scenes while Ed was a perfectionist who wanted everything done exactly as written. That clash caused friction during rehearsals. There were times when Katie would add a joke or change a line and Ed would stop everything and argue that it ruined the scene. Katie felt like Ed was being controlling and rigid. Ed felt like Katie was being undisciplined. The tension got so bad during season 2 that the producers had to step in and mediate. They told Ed and Katie to figure it out or the show would suffer. Ed admitted he was mostly to blame. He said his ego and his need for control made him difficult to work with, and Katie deserved better. But he also said Katie could be stubborn and refused to admit when her improvising did not work. They eventually found a rhythm, but it took years, and even then there was always an undercurrent of tension. The relationship that really shocked people was Ed's feud with David Faustino, who played Bud Bundy. David was just a kid when the show started, and Ed admitted he treated him terribly. Ed said he was impatient and harsh and expected David to perform like an experienced adult actor. When David made mistakes or forgot lines, Ed would snap at him in front of everyone. David later said in interviews that Ed intimidated him for years and he dreaded filming scenes with him. Ed recently admitted that hearing David say that broke his heart. He said he was a bully and there is no excuse for how he treated a child. Ed revealed that he tried to apologize to David years later, but David was not ready to forgive him. They are cordial now, but the relationship never fully recovered. What fans never figured out is how that tension actually made some scenes better. Bud was supposed to be intimidated by Al and scared of disappointing him. David did not have to act that fear because he genuinely felt it around Ed. It is a disturbing truth, but Ed admitted it is real. One of the biggest secrets about Married with Children involves the show's studio audience. Most people think the laughter you hear on the show was genuine, but Ed O'Neill revealed that is only partly true. The show was filmed in front of a live audience, but producers manipulated the laughter constantly. If a joke did not get a big enough laugh, they would ask the audience to laugh louder and record it again. If a scene played flat, they would add canned laughter in post-production. Ed said this drove him crazy because he wanted the show to succeed on its own merits without tricks. He got into multiple arguments with producers about it, but they told him every sitcom did it and he needed to stop complaining. Ed also revealed that sometimes the audience laughed at things that were not supposed to be funny. During scenes where Al was genuinely cruel or pathetic, some people in the crowd would laugh uncomfortably and it would throw off the entire rhythm. Ed said they would have to stop and reset and film the scene again, which made everything take twice as long. There was one incident Ed never spoke about until recently that exposed just how fake the audience laughter really was. During a season 5 episode, Al had a long monologue about his miserable life. Ed delivered it perfectly. He made it funny but also deeply sad. When he finished, the studio audience sat in complete silence. Not because the scene was bad, but because it was too real. People did not know if they should laugh or cry. The producers panicked. They needed laughter for a sitcom, so they told Ed to do it again, but make it funnier. Ed refused. He said the scene was perfect, and if the audience did not laugh, that was their problem. The producers overruled him and added canned laughter anyway. When Ed saw the final edit, he was furious. He said they had turned a moment of real emotion into just another cheap joke. That moment made Ed realize the show was never going to be what he wanted it to be. It was always going to prioritize laughs over truth, and there was nothing he could do about it. Ed O'Neill finally revealed the one scene he absolutely refused to film, and it almost got him fired. During season 6, the writers pitched an episode where Al cheats on Peg. The story involved Al meeting an attractive woman who showed him attention, and after years of being rejected by Peg, he would sleep with her. The writers thought it would be edgy and funny and push boundaries. Ed thought it would destroy the entire show. He told the writers that Al Bundy could be a lot of things, but he was not a cheater. Al loved Peg even though he complained about her constantly. That loyalty was the only thing that made Al sympathetic. If he cheated, the audience would turn on him permanently. The writers disagreed. They said the show needed to stay fresh and take risks. Ed did not care. He told them he would not film the episode and they could fire him if they wanted. The standoff lasted for days. Network executives got involved and pressured Ed to back down. Ed stood firm. He said his name was attached to the show and he was not going to be part of something that betrayed the character. Finally, the writers agreed to scrap the episode, but they were furious. Ed said his relationship with the writing staff was never the same after that. They resented him for having creative control and started writing scripts that were intentionally harder for him to perform. What Ed revealed next is even more disturbing. The writers began punishing him by adding more and more physical comedy that they knew would hurt him. Scenes where Al fell downstairs or got hit in the face or collapsed from exhaustion. Ed was in his 40s and 50s during the later seasons, and his body could not handle it. He developed chronic back pain and knee problems that still bother him today. Ed said he knew what the writers were doing, but he refused to complain because that would prove they had gotten to him. So he did every painful stunt and suffered in silence. Looking back, Ed said it was stupid and prideful, but at the time his ego would not let him admit defeat. What fans never figured out is that many of Al Bundy's physical reactions in later seasons were not acting. When Al winced or groaned or limped, that was Ed genuinely in pain. The writers got their revenge and Ed paid the price with his body. The most painful revelation Ed O'Neill made involves his own family and how playing Al Bundy destroyed his first marriage. Ed admitted that he became Al in real life. He was bitter and angry and emotionally distant. He would come home from filming and collapse on the couch, just like Al. His wife would try to talk to him and he would respond with sarcasm and insults just like Ali did with Peg. Ed said he did not even realize it was happening until his wife told him she wanted a divorce. She said living with him had become unbearable because he was not Ed anymore. He was Al Bundy. That conversation shattered Ed. He begged her to give him another chance and promised he would change, but the damage was done. They separated during season 7 and divorced a year later. Ed admitted that playing a character who hated his life and his wife for 8 hours a day made it impossible to come home and be a loving husband. The negativity seeped into everything. Ed said his biggest regret is not recognizing what was happening sooner. He should have gone to therapy or taken a break from the show, but his pride stopped him. He thought he was strong enough to separate Ed from Al, but he was wrong. Ed also revealed how the divorce affected his performance on the show. During season 8, he was going through the worst period of his life. He was lonely and depressed and questioning everything, but he had to show up every week and play a character who was also miserable. Ed said some of the most acclaimed episodes from that season came from him channeling real pain into Al Bundy. There is an episode where Al talks about feeling invisible and worthless. Ed said he was not acting. Those were his real feelings. The audience laughed, but Ed was crying inside. What fans never figured out is that Al Bundy's sadness in the later seasons was not just good writing. It was Ed O'Neill breaking down in front of millions of people and disguising it as comedy. Ed said if he could go back, he would have quit the show after his divorce, but he needed the money and the distraction, so he kept going. He spent 3 more years playing a character that reminded him every day of his failures. One of the most controversial moments in Married with Children history involves the 1989 boycott led by Terry Ricolta. Ed O'Neill recently revealed what really happened behind the scenes during that crisis, and it is far worse than anyone knew. When Terry started her campaign against the show, Ed thought it would blow over. Controversial shows got complaints all the time and nothing ever came of it. But this was different. Major advertisers started pulling out. Procter & Gamble and McDonald's and Coca-Cola all yanked their commercials. Fox executives panicked. The network was still new, and losing advertising revenue over one sitcom felt like a catastrophe. Ed said he was called into emergency meetings where executives discussed cancelling the show entirely. They told Ed and the cast that unless the controversy died down, Married with Children was finished. Ed admitted he was terrified, not because he loved the show, but because his entire career was tied to Al Bundy. If the show got cancelled because of controversy, Ed would be radioactive. No network would touch him. The cast was told to stay quiet and let the network handle everything. But Ed said Katie Sagal was furious and wanted to fight back publicly. She thought Terry Ricolta was a hypocrite and the boycott was ridiculous. Ed agreed, but he was too scared to speak up. He said that cowardice still bothers him today. Katie went to the press anyway and defended the show. She said Married with Children was satire, and anyone who took it seriously was missing the point. Ed said watching Katie risk her career to defend the show made him realize how weak he had been. The boycott eventually backfired, and ratings skyrocketed, but Ed admitted the whole experience traumatized him. He realized the show was not just entertainment. It was a political and cultural battleground, and he was stuck in the middle whether he liked it or not. Ed O'Neill recently made an admission that stunned fans. He hated the show's theme song and fought to have it removed. He thought the song was cheesy and made the show feel cheaper than it already was. Ed wanted something edgier and more modern, but the network loved the song and refused to change it. Ed said he complained about it for 11 years and nobody listened. He also revealed that he hated Al Bundy's signature move of putting his hand in his waistband. Ed said it started as a one-time joke, but the producers loved it and made him do it constantly. Ed thought it was lowbrow and embarrassing, but it became one of the most iconic things about the character. Ed admitted that both the theme song and the hand gesture became defining elements of the show, and he was wrong to resist them. But at the time, his ego told him he knew better than everyone else. Looking back, Ed said his biggest mistake was fighting against the show instead of embracing it. He spent 11 years resenting Married with Children and wishing he was doing something else. That negativity made him miserable and hurt the people around him. It was not until years later, when he landed the role of Jay Pritchett on Modern Family, that Ed realized how lucky he had been. Modern Family made him wealthy and respected, but it never had the cultural impact of Married with Children. People still quote Al Bundy decades later. They dress up as him for Halloween and make memes and introduce the show to their kids. Ed said he finally understands that Married with Children was special, and he wasted years being too bitter to appreciate it. Ed O'Neill's final thoughts on Married with Children are raw and honest. He admits he was difficult and selfish and made mistakes that hurt people. He admits the show took a toll on his body and his marriage and his mental health. But he also admits that Al Bundy gave him something most actors never get, a character that outlived the show and became part of television history. Ed said if he could go back, he would change a lot of things. He would be kinder to David Faustino and more collaborative with Katie Sagal. He would stand up to the writers when they crossed lines, and stand up for the show when it was under attack. He would protect his marriage and take care of his body, and recognize the difference between Ed and Al before it was too late. But Ed also said he would still take the role because despite everything, Married with Children defined his life. It gave him a career and a legacy and taught him lessons he could not have learned any other way. What fans never figured out is that Ed O'Neill is not Al Bundy. He is a complicated man who made mistakes and carries regrets, and spent decades wrestling with a character that consumed him. The truth about Married with Children is messy and painful, and far different from the sitcom people remember. But that truth is also what makes the show matter. Behind every laugh was real tension. Behind every iconic moment was real sacrifice. And behind Al Bundy was a man who gave everything to a role he never wanted and spent the rest of his life figuring out what it cost him